Video games are more expensive than ever. You've got the $70 box price, which for most games, that is simply the entry fee. Then you've got, if you don't spend extra money, you're going to get it late, aka the early access, which really means just getting it 3-4 days later than everyone else if you don't pay more for it at launch. You've got DLC, microtransactions, you've got battle passes. It's seemingly never ending. And these companies, these game publishers, they're always thinking about new schemes, how they can try and dissect more money from players. Now, that's obviously not all games. There are a select few where the quality is there. We're getting great content, lots of it, but those are few and far between. And it feels like when you do get a game that cuts out all the garbage, all of the nonsense, that is an outlier, and we almost celebrate that. If we get a game that is feature complete for the normal $60, $70 box price, people start celebrating it. And while that's often cool in the moment, and I'm glad those games exist, it is a little bit sad that that is where we're aiming for. You get a game that has the content, it's a fair price, that is just so rare and does feel special these days. The other problem with all of these monetization schemes, DLC and so on is all these games that release, they bang on about, they're so expensive to make. But it's not like they're expensive because they're delivering so much content. It all goes into the marketing, the graphics in the game, face models. Even though the model that they're referencing, when they get the character in the game, they often make them uglier on purpose to push some sort of social agenda. So that's just weird. And we, the customer, are kind of paying for that because of these ballooning budgets on games. Essentially, game publishers are spending so much money on things that don't really affect the paying customer. And then when we get into the game, there's less content than ever. Have you ever noticed just how bad side content, side quests are in most AAA titles over the last 10-15 years? It's because the metrics tell these companies that most people don't engage with it. So therefore, it's always totally lazy, copy and pasted crap. And most of the good content is front-loaded because that's what reviewers see. It's what most players see because most people pick up a game, they play it for a few hours, they never touch it again. Very few people finish their games, companies know it, so we're getting less content, we're paying more for it. And that is why I find it disingenuous that the ex-Blizzard president is implying that we should pay these developers more for these games. Now, his actual point, which I'll go through, it's not necessarily the worst thing in the world. Some of it I've actually thought about before, but it's more about who it is coming from. This is a very wealthy person, and it's also someone who is in an executive role, has been in executive roles for years in the game industries. It's Mike Ybarra. He worked at Microsoft Xbox for 20 plus years, pushing their crap. When did they last release a good game? It's been like 30 years. You've got to go back to like the Xbox 360 or something to find it. You've really got to dig deep to find a good game they've been involved in. He then moved on to Blizzard, where he just seemed like a really generic suit, but his whole shtick was to try and sound like, hey, fellow kids, fellow gamers, I'm just one of you who happens to be in a corporate role, but I'm totally a gamer and I just want games to be great with integrity. But then in terms of his job, he never applies any of this thinking. He goes on social media, bangs on and on about, can't we get back to the good old days of gaming where it was all about the quality of content, none of these monetization schemes. But he's the sort of person who's pushing for this stuff because he doesn't really care about gaming. He just cares about his own pocket, his own career, his own status in the industry. And you can just see it on his face. Anytime you see him at one of these corporate events, some sort of gaming presentation, he just comes across as totally fake, and I'm not buying any of it. And this statement of his, it seems like another one of his agendas. So even if there's some merit maybe in what he's saying, I'll go through that. I think that his intentions, they are not genuine. And here's what he says. I thought about this idea for a while as a player, since I've been diving into single-player games lately. When I beat a game, there are some that just leave me in awe of how amazing the experience was. At the end of the game, I've often thought, I wish I could give these folks around another $10 or $20 because it was worth more than my initial $70. and they didn't try to nickel and dime me every second. Now, it's funny that he's impressed with this, because he worked at Blizzard, where I don't think they have any games where this doesn't go on. He was there for Diablo 4, which had everything that I mentioned at the start of this video. The early access, the microtransactions, always online despite being a mostly single-player game, battle passes, I think seasons, all this sort of nonsense. So he literally could have made these changes, made the sort of game that he's impressed by, and he didn't do it because he was chasing the money, and maybe it was out of his hands, but I highly doubt he was trying to influence things, get us back to the good old days. I don't believe that. I think he's saying this to try and appeal to gamers, to try and be like his, I don't know if they're friends, but the old Phil Spencer at Xbox, who does the same thing. His business decisions, it's all about sucking up to Microsoft and pleasing his bosses, but he pretends to be, yeah, I'm just another fellow gamer, I'm doing the best. They love to cultivate this image of themselves, but they don't actually put any of it into practice. It's all bullshit. So he basically is saying that I'm happy to spend $10 or $20 extra on the game. And he's talking about titles like Horizon Zero Dawn, God of War, Red Dead Redemption 2, Baldur's Gate 3, and Elden Ring. So he's only here giving examples of AAA titles. It's another reason that I don't believe that he has any integrity, because while some of these games are good, I just find it interesting that a corporate executive of huge video game publishers only seem interested in AAA games. They're not talking about any indie titles here, where maybe something like this could have more merit, where you have a small indie developer, they have to release their games cheap or they won't be able to compete, and you think about maybe giving them a little bit of extra money to help them out. He's not talking about the little guy, he's talking about huge conglomerates. I mean, even Baldur's Gate 3, even though that definitely is a game with lots of integrity, you get all of the content up front, there is no bullshit, it was still made by a team of 300 plus people, and they were backed by Hasbro, who are a $1 billion company. So they don't really need your money. They're not going to go out of business in this case. It was a highly successful game. Elden Ring, I think they might have even 10-cent investment from Software, and I believe From Software are actually owned by a bigger conglomerate now as well. They're not an independent studio as far as I know. So I just feel like he's one of these suits who's always trying to push AAA and nothing else, because that's what he has a stake in. He's not at Blizzard right now, but he's likely going to move somewhere else where he's going to push the same crap. So convincing gamers that only AAA games are where the quality is, I think there's something to that. And maybe it's not a big deal, he might have just used these as examples, but because I just know this guy is disingenuous, I just find it interesting that he couldn't think of one single indie game to put in this category. I also don't really buy this as well, because he says, I know $70 is already a lot, but it's an option at the end of the game I wish I had at times. Some games are that special. Well, you're implying that to play Horizon Zero Dawn and God of War, it's only $70. But for a lot of the time, that's not true, because while they now get ported to PC, even though it's years after the fact in some cases, when Horizon Zero Dawn came out, the only way to play it was to spend $500+ on a console. And that is like an entry price for many people, because if you're happily playing on PC, like I am most of the time, but then to access this game, you have to buy this useless electronic, you've got to set it up and use that as a gaming device just to play this one or maybe two titles. It's not convenient. It's basically just giving Sony money for no reason, because you're not getting any value of the console. You just want to play on PC, but you can't because they paywalled their games behind this device. You have to spend that money to play it. So go and get fucked with your $10 or $20 extra, because I've had to spend all this money on a console just to play the game. And I know that's not so much the case now, given the game's are ported to PC, but they still come to PC at full price. So Horizon Forbidden West. Apparently it was a good port. I don't really have any interest in it because I played the first, and to me it just played like a Ubisoft game with slightly better combat. I didn't give a shit about the story. I thought Alloy or whatever her name was. She just seemed like she wasn't allowed to have any flaws. It was released at a time where women as the protagonist, they had to be totally flawless. In fact, I think, spoiler alert, I think she was a clone of like the most perfect human to ever exist. Not in terms of looks necessarily, but in terms of being able to do things, being competent at absolutely everything, absolutely no flaws whatsoever. And apparently that was a good character move, according to people who were trying to push an agenda. So I didn't care for the story, even if the setting was kind of interesting. But they release Horizon Forbidden West, full price on PC, $95 in my country. And it's like a 3-year-old game at this point? So they're charging a lot more than it is really worth. It's probably, by the way, why Sony games historically underperform on PC, because they release old games at full price, they expect us to pay for it. It's a ripoff, because by then, on, say, PS4, PS5, those games are heavily discounted. Probably like $40, but to play it on PC, I've got to pay $95. Ridiculous. And then this idiot, he wants us to pay an extra $10 or $20 for it. Now, I won't be disingenuous myself. He's not saying, oh, games should be more expensive, they should be $90, $100. He's basically saying that if a game is really special, wouldn't it be nice if there was an option to tip the developer and give them a little bit extra? Now, I have actually thought about this myself as well. So the idea itself, I don't think it's a totally an insane take. It's really about who it's coming from. Baldur's Gate 3. I bought it like 4 years ago in early access, and I played the first act. I really enjoyed it, and then I didn't think about it for 3 years. It came out, full release, and I got to play it again all the way through with 2 extra acts, and I didn't have to spend any extra money, not a single cent extra. And I kind of felt like, gee, I've probably really gotten the good deal here, I feel like, because I was happy with the full price purchase just for Act 1 in early access. I had 30 or 40 hours of fun, more than most games. And now I get to play the whole thing without spending any extra money. And while that's great, I'm happy to be able to save some money. I did sort of think, well, I wouldn't have minded giving these guys a little bit extra for maybe something else. Not in-game microtransactions, because that sort of ruins the game, but I did think about maybe buying a collector's edition, and maybe I'll do something like that one day. But that to me is a very personal choice that should never be pushed on anyone at all. And I don't really think the developer should have any kind of finger on the scale there whatsoever. And what I mean by that is I would not want at the end of the game some sort of prompt asking me for a PayPal donation or click here and you can give us $20. If they start doing that, I just feel like it would be very quickly used maliciously. It would start off, hey, just give us some money if you want to, and then there would be other things, strings attached. Like, if you give us that money, then we'll put you in the credits, kind of like a Kickstarter. Or they'll start locking content behind it and it will suddenly become another early access scheme or something like that, monetization scheme. So I would not want the option to be there at all. Other people in the comments have correctly pointed out, well, if you want to give them some more money, go to their website and buy some merch. I think you can buy like Baldur's Gate 3 t-shirts. There's probably a board game of Divinity I think I saw. You can buy a mug for your coffee. That sort of stuff. I think that's totally fine, and it's probably a much better way to support them than some idea that they're going to put, a menu in the game where you can just be giving them more money because they're such great guys. We've already seen it anyway, that even when a game has a great reputation, like an Elden Ring or like a Witcher 3, that it does get used against us, because many people, many gamers, they trusted CD Projekt Red with Cyberpunk because of the reputation that they've cultivated of, hey, no schemes, we released the game, it's complete, it's ready to go. And then they took all these pre-orders for Cyberpunk, released the game, and it was a scam, especially on some of the earlier consoles, like Xbox One and the PS4. I thought it was okay on PC, but it was very underwhelming in terms of polish, issues with visuals, bugs, and so on. They absolutely took the goodwill of players and used it against them. So any of these developers, it's fine to support them, but they're only as good as their last game, And they are businesses. They're not our friends. As soon as it's not convenient to be nice to us, then they'll probably screw us over. That's just the sad truth. They'll sell themselves out. Maybe Swen at Larian won't do it. He's been in the industry a long time, and I think it's taken so long for him to get to this point. He doesn't want to throw that away. So I believe in what he's doing. Same with From Software to an extent, but things could change very quickly. I don't believe in just throwing money away for no reason. If they want extra money for us, yeah, go to their website, maybe you buy a t-shirt, or if they want to release DLC later and it's not just stuff that they've left out of the main game on purpose to try and get more money, which happens a lot, fine, that sort of stuff is okay, but I don't trust Mike, because I think the reason he says stuff like this is he's got that agenda in mind where maybe he thinks this will be a good idea for his next game studio that he's at. The next time he's president of the company, he wants to implement some scheme like this to try and extract money from people for no extra value. By trying to pretend, hey, we're your friends, we're trying to get by, give us some more money, give us a tip, you know, tipping culture like in America. We don't have that here in Australia, so it seems insane to me, but I understand it's a big thing in some places in the world. So it feels like he's trying to use that just to get extra coin. He says at the end here, I know most will dislike this idea with a smiley face. Again, something's just slimy about this guy. By the way, I realize we are tired of tipping and everything else, but I view this different from a pressure to tip type scenario many face and give feedback on. Again, I just think this will start to be used maliciously. If it was available and the developers have it as a prompt, it's not just like a PayPal link on their website that no one's telling them about. You would only know about it if you went there. If it's in the game in your face saying, hey, give us some extra money if you like the game, I don't like that one bit. It will be used for evil very quickly. Fortunately, most people are sort of calling him out and criticizing this. Most are being polite. They might be fans of this person. And it's because, unfortunately, some people do believe in him and think he's genuine. You've got this Jez person. He's like an Xbox suck-up. He's like, I've often thought about that. Yeah, I'm sure you will. You've literally sold your soul to Microsoft. So I'm not surprised at all. I did like this comment though. You're right. I should tip the devs for a great single-player campaign on Modern Warfare 3. Terrific Season 1 and 3 of Diablo. An extra tip for Overwatch 2. All Blizzard products, which are all absolutely terrible. And Mike Ybarra was there for, I think, most, if not all of these. As the former president of Blizzard, you're smarter than this. The problem isn't consumer behavior. Well, I don't think he's stupid. It's not a question of smart. He knows what he's doing here. He's trying to condition people into spending more money on games. And this thought just popped into my mind as well. What about what happens often where a game comes out and when the reviews drop just before release, they don't mention microtransactions and so on because the bait and switch happens where they don't turn on the online store until after the game releases. So what if they pull that crap where they release the game, they get the good word of mouth, no schemes here, you play it, and then you tip them $20 because you think it's the next Elden Ring, the next From Software or whatever, and then 3 weeks later they turn the online cash shop on, and then they just start raking in coin from everyone else. Once again, if this was a random person saying this, I wouldn't think much of it, but because it is the ex-president of Blizzard, he has a big say in the industry, he seems to be in the know, he has connections. If he is saying this, it makes me think that this could be the next industry scheme, that he will have some say in it. You get to the end credits, they're trying to extract more money from you, they're going to make you feel bad if you only pay for the box price. These amazing developers, God of War, I think the studio behind God of War was a Sweet Baby Inc. client, by the way. Who wants to give them more money? This could be where things are going. So hopefully people who are reading this person's followers, hopefully they're not having a bar of it. They realize that he doesn't really care about games. He is a suit. He only cares about his own career progression. And we start to just see the Elden Rings and Baldur's Gate 3s, not special games that we have to tip more money for. They're just normal games. That should be the norm. That should be what we're getting all the time. Normalize that. Don't treat it like it is so special that we have to treat the developers like royalty all the time, because it's not really true. Thanks so much for listening. I'll see you on the next one. Cheers. Bye.